14 scary islands that humans refuse to populate. Though humans in the distant and sometimes even recent past have attempted to populate some of these islands, they are today, for crazy reasons ranging from harsh weather to bunny rabbits, eerily abandoned and completely lacking any human presence. Number 14. Stroma. Lying off the northern coast of Scotland's mainland, Stroma's harsh environment and desolate landscape devoid of plant life made things difficult for its residents, which numbered 375 in the early 1900s. Finally, the isolation of the island and the lure of economic opportunities on the mainland drove many people to leave. The last islanders finally left in 1962. Today, Stroma has become a fascinating land of ruins. A windowless church lies eerily vacant, and a silent resting phone booth has sat unused for who knows how many years. Homes once full of families lie dotting the ground of the abandoned island.
Number 13.
Great Isaac Cay. Its razor-sharp terrain made of coral polyps, along with several eerie tales throughout its history, make this island in the Bermuda Triangle devoid of human presence. The desolate landscape was populated from the erection of its 152-foot-tall lighthouse in the 1850s to the mysterious disappearance of its lone occupants, the lighthouse keepers, in 1969. No one knows what happened, but the lighthouse workers seemed to vanish into thin air when people found the area vacant on August 4th. A passing hurricane a few days prior was likely the cause of the incident. Ever since, the Great Isaac Light was automated, and the rest of the compound's buildings have been left to decay.
Number 12.
Snake Island. Developers won't even think about touching this island off the shore of Brazil with very good reason. It's populated by an incredible amount of golden lancehead snakes, a unique species of pit viper whose venom is so potent that it melts the flesh around their bites. Migrating birds use the island as a rest point, providing the snakes with enough food to survive and thrive.
Number 11.
Clipperton. Small and barren save for a few clumps of coconut palms, Clipperton lies off the coast of Central America in the eastern Pacific Ocean. Mexico claimed the island until international arbitration awarded it to France in 1931. Throughout its history, Clipperton has been inhabited by guano miners and military personnel from Mexico. In more recent times, it's been visited occasionally by fishermen, the French Navy, film crews, ham radio operators, and the occasional shipwreck survivors.
Number 10.
Okunoshima. During World War II, the Japanese used Okunoshima to make poison gas, which would be used for chemical warfare that was carried out in China. This unsavory history is largely overshadowed today by bunny rabbits. That's right, the island, also called Rabbit Island, is home to hundreds of the adorable fuzzy mammals. After World War II, the Japanese turned the island into a park and intentionally set the animals loose. No one permanently lives on the island, but tourists often come to feed its population of cute critters.
Number 9.
St. George in the Seaweed. Humans first populated this island sometime around 1,000 years ago when a Benedictine monastery was built on the site. More buildings were constructed and the island was given over to clerical order until the 1700s, when a massive fire swept across the land. By 1800, a political prison had been established. Bunkers were built following the start of World War I, but were seldom used. Nazis secretly used the island's encampments so that their divers could learn how to plant underwater mines during World War II. At the end of the war, the island was abandoned, and today empty military and religious buildings can still be seen from the shores of the island.
Number 8.
Holland. Back in the mid-1800s, Holland was one of the largest inhabited islands in the Chesapeake Bay. Its community had approximately 70 homes, a post office, a two-room school, a church, and a doctor. Islanders would dredge for oysters and fish to support themselves. But by the early 1900s, erosion had caused the west side of the land, where most of the population lived, to decay. Today, the island has eroded to nearly nothing, while it's also been inundated as a result of rising sea levels. The last remaining house on Holland, which was built in 1888, collapsed and fell into the bay in 2010.
Number 7.
Fort Carroll. Robert E. Lee designed the structure and supervised construction of Fort Carroll, an artificial island just south of Baltimore, Maryland. The fort was part of a construction program which aimed to defend the most important ports in the young country. The fort would be armed with guns, manned, and used during the Civil War and the Spanish-American War. After World War I broke out, the guns would be removed to be used elsewhere. Though it would be used as a firing range during World War II, and an attorney intended to put a casino on the island, nothing major would ever happen at Fort Carroll again. Today it's been left deserted as a home for various wildlife and a site for urban explorers.
Number 6.
Shooters Island. The border of New York and New Jersey runs through Shooters Island, meaning its north end technically belongs to New Jersey, while the rest is a borough of New York's Staten Island. During the Revolutionary War, George Washington used the island as a drop-off point for carriers, and spies would frequently seek its borders as a safe haven. In the early 1900s, Shooters Island became an industrial center and major shipyard with buildings and docks covering the land. After World War I, it was used as a ship junkyard before ultimately being abandoned in the 1920s.
Number 5.
Pollepel. There's not much on Pollepel Island, which lies in the Hudson River, except, strangely, an abandoned military surplus warehouse and a small castle. Francis Bannerman purchased the island in 1900 to keep his growing supply of military equipment. Bannerman would live in the castle and store weapons in the arsenal that was built until his death in 1918. In 1920, 200 tons of shells and powder exploded. destroying a chunk of the complex. For a while, people would visit the island on tours, but a 1969 fire that destroyed the roofs and floors of the arsenal put an end to that. Today, the island and its structures remain strangely vacant, nothing more than a curious sight for New Yorkers.
Number 4.
North Brother Island. Today and throughout the majority of its history, New York's North Brother Island has been devoid of human inhabitants. However, a contagious disease hospital called Riverside, which opened in the late 1800s and housed the infamous Typhoid Mary Mallon, operated on the island. Its staff assisted in rescuing survivors after the General Slocum steamship caught fire nearby in 1905. That disaster resulted in over 1,000 casualties, and would be the largest loss of life in New York's history until 9/11. The hospital also housed war veterans following World War II, and later served as a treatment center for drug addicts. Finally, in 1963, it closed its doors for good, and has been left abandoned on the island, which itself serves as nothing more than a bird sanctuary for Black Crowned Night Herons.
Number 3.
Hashima. One shot from above will make you think, hey, that island's populated. Get it the heck off this list. Don't let appearances fool you, my YouTube heroes. That island is Hashima, off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan. In the late 19th century, coal was found beneath Hashima. Homes were eventually built for the workers that came to mine the valuable commodity. At its peak, the island's population reached north of 5,000, making it one of the most densely populated places on Earth. Finally, in 1974, the coal ran out, leaving the workers that populated the island to scramble back to the mainland in search of another job opportunity. The island was left abandoned, the buildings destined to crumble and decay as they are today, slowly being worn away by nature's elements.
Number 2.
The Antipodes. It would be really tough to be shipwrecked on the Antipodes Islands. They're an inhospitable clump of volcanic islands south of New Zealand. The biggest island is Antipodes, at 7.7 square miles. A number of castaways have found themselves on the island throughout the years. The 11 surviving crew members of the Spirit of the Dawn spent 87 days stuck on the island in 1893. They were forced to eat raw birds, mussels, and roots to survive. Though there haven't been any castaways on the island for years, this castaway hut sits at the northern end of Antipodes just in case. Wow, how frightening is the Antipodes Islands? That's one place you'd never want to find yourself stuck. Anyways, we'd like to thank those of you that commented on our 13 of the most amazing arcades in the world video. Just because arcades are dying out doesn't mean they're not totally awesome, and we're glad some of you enjoyed the countdown. And now, without further ado,
Number 1.
Island of the Dolls. No one lives on the Island of the Dolls, but a lot of people visit. This is because the land is littered with hundreds of creepy porcelain dolls. The island's lone inhabitant, Don Julian Santana, adorned the trees with the odd decorations to ward off and perhaps appease the spirit of a dead girl. When the man, who passed away some years ago, first arrived on the island, he found the anonymous girl, who had apparently drowned in a canal, and her toy doll floating nearby.